You ever feel a stare from the empty room behind you? Welcome to the edge of reality. Tonight we uncover 5 terrifying true encounters, captured, documented, and disturbingly real. These aren't just campfire tales, they're the kind that make you question the world you think you know. So, dim the lights, silence your phone, and prepare. This is Horror Ghost Stories from Real Life. Sarah sat cross-legged on her couch, the soft rustle of the autumn wind brushing the window panes. Her cabin was quiet, bathed in the golden glow of a single lamp as she flipped through photos from her solo hunting trip. Fallen leaves, silver frost, the dark stretch of the woods, each image familiar, comforting. The house smelled faintly of pinewood and old blankets, the air calm, almost drowsy. But halfway through the photos, her finger hovered. Something felt wrong. There it was. In one photo, between 2 crooked trees, stood a figure draped in a dark cloak, its shape barely solid, as if it floated between worlds. Sarah felt her heart pound as she checked the timestamp. It was taken at dawn, during a time she couldn't even remember being awake. She didn't recall anyone nearby, let alone this shadowed presence. She shut the camera, palms cold, a sick twist curling in her stomach. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the window just once. The next morning, her husband Mark noticed her silence, the distant look in her eyes. She handed him the camera without a word, watching as his brow furrowed at the image. His hands tensed. The figure's outline was too familiar, like the missing friend they never spoke of, the one who vanished in those woods years ago. Mark glanced at Sarah, who now sat rigid, as if feeling watched. That night, neither of them spoke about the photo, but they both locked the bedroom door. Sarah woke screaming just after 3, sweat-soaked, eyes wide. She pointed to the foot of the bed, whispering through chattering teeth, "He's here!" Mark saw nothing, but felt the air shift, a heavy cold pressing into the room. The next day they debated theories, trick of the light, trauma, coincidence, but Sarah insisted she knew that face. The photo was gone, deleted by shaking hands, but something had already been invited in. That night, they left the bedroom light on. Neighbours say Sarah keeps the curtains drawn now, never opening the windows, even on bright days. Some nights, they hear her pacing, murmuring to the shadows. Mark, once steady and sceptical, has taken to sleeping on the couch. And though the figure in the photo was erased, Sarah swears she still sees him, standing silently outside the bedroom window, waiting. And now, we move from the cold, watchful shadows outside Sarah's window to a place where the shadows live inside the walls, a room dressed in velvet and perfume, where the night waits patiently. For the moment you turn off the light, let's check in to the Mizpah Hotel. Mark arrived at the Mizpah Hotel just past dusk, the neon sign flickering against a desert sky bruised with violet. The lobby smelled faintly of old roses, the kind that linger too long in closed-up rooms. Room 504 greeted him with soft, faded wallpaper and the faint scent of perfume he couldn't place. He unpacked, set his things neatly and sighed into the quiet, grateful for a rare night to himself. Outside, the wind scraped softly against the window, and Mark thought, finally, a little peace. But as he turned off the lamp, the shadows in the corner of the room seemed just a little too deep. He woke sometime after midnight, heart racing, as though something had pulled him out of sleep. The room was bitterly cold, his breath a pale mist, though the heater hissed quietly in the corner. Then came the whisper, soft, like a woman's voice just behind his ear, saying words he couldn't quite catch. Mark sat up, squinting into the dark, only to see the bathroom light glowing under the door, even though he was sure he'd turned it off. He slid out of bed, feet sinking into the plush, ice-cold carpet. Just as he reached the bathroom door, it slammed shut so hard the walls shuddered. Mark stood frozen, staring at the door handle that now looked faintly smudged, as if someone had just let go. His chest tightened as he noticed the faint trace of something sweet, old perfume, richer and heavier now, filling the air. Goosebumps prickled along his arms as he backed away, eyes darting to the mirror above the desk. Something was there, an imprint maybe, but the glass only showed his pale, shaken reflection, blinking rapidly in the dim light. Somewhere inside the walls, faintly, a whisper carried through again, a woman's laughter, light and trailing. By dawn, Mark hadn't slept, sitting stiffly on the edge of the bed, waiting for morning like it was a lifeline. His mind raced through explanations, old pipes, faulty wiring, his own exhaustion, but none of them quieted the sinking feeling in his gut. As the first pale sunlight crept through the curtains, Mark forced himself to gather his things, desperate to leave. But when he turned toward the bathroom mirror, he froze. Written there, in looping, perfect red script, were the words, "Come back soon," and just below, a delicate red lipstick kiss. Mark checked out without a word, leaving the Mizpah's velvet-lined lobby behind, never looking back. Locals say room 504 still waits, the light flickering on at odd hours when no one's inside. They say you can sometimes hear a woman's whisper late at night, if you press your ear to the door. And sometimes, just sometimes, the mirror holds faint traces of a lipstick smile that no one dares wipe away. No one knows who she's waiting for, but some believe she already chose. We leave the Mizpah Hotel now. Its mirrors still whispering, its shadows still watching. But what if the spirits you meet don't stay behind? What if they follow you? Across miles, across states, across every locked door you trust. This next story isn't about a haunted place, it's about a haunted person. After a peaceful vacation in West Virginia, Lisa unlocked her front door, the familiar creak of the hinges greeting her like an old friend. The house smelled faintly of lavender from the diffuser she'd left running, comforting, safe. Her dog Milo wagged his tail excitedly, circling her feet as she unpacked. That night, as she settled into bed, she noticed the hallway light flicker once, then steady. She brushed it off as nothing. But her dog kept staring into the darkened corner by the bedroom door, unmoving. A few nights later, Lisa jolted awake, her chest tight, air stuck halfway in her throat. She felt it again, the soft, unnatural tug at her nostrils, as if invisible fingers were pinching them shut. Panicked, she sat up just in time to see a shape slipping from her room. Tall, shadowed, almost blending into the walls. Milo whimpered at the foot of the bed, ears flat, eyes wide with something between fear and recognition. The air smelled faintly of wet earth, cold and sour. Determined, Lisa called in a local medium, an older woman with sharp eyes and a quiet, grim demeanour. Together they walked the house, the medium trailing her fingers along the walls, murmuring under her breath. She stopped in the hallway, eyes narrowing, and told Lisa softly, "Something has attached itself to you." That night they performed a cleansing, the house thick with sage smoke and salt dusting every window and door. But as Lisa lay in bed afterward, she heard the unmistakable sound of the hallway floorboards groaning under weight. Lisa tried to rationalize it, stress, exhaustion, tricks of the mind, but Milo's behavior only worsened. He stopped entering certain rooms, barked at empty spaces and paced restlessly all night. The medium offered theories, a lost soul, a hitchhiker spirit drawn to Lisa's energy during her time away. Lisa wondered if the mountain trails she'd wandered had offered something more than just scenic views. Still, the idea that she was the magnet, not the house, was what unsettled her the most. In the end, Lisa moved. She left behind the house, the memories, the flickering lights. But the first night in her new apartment, just as she was drifting off, her phone buzzed quietly on the nightstand. A single text from an unknown number lit the screen. "Nice new place." We leave Lisa behind, moving homes but not outrunning what clung to her. Now we drift to the quiet hills of Virginia, where the danger doesn't slip through walls or windows. It stands on the porch, wearing a face you trust, and a smile that's never quite right. Emily and Dan moved into a quiet, tree-lined cabin near Elliston, Virginia, chasing a slower life away from the city. Most afternoons, Emily sat by the window with tea, watching the wind ruffle the Appalachian leaves. The house creaked softly, but it was the kind of creak you learned to trust. That day, Dan was working his shift an hour away. The driveway empty, the house utterly still. Then the doorbell rang, sharp and unexpected, cutting through the calm like a blade. Emily glanced through the lace curtain and felt her heart jolt. Dan was standing on the porch staring back at her, except he wasn't wearing his work clothes. He stood perfectly still, hands at his sides, as if waiting for something. The sun slipped behind the trees, casting his face half in shadow. When she opened the door, the porch was empty, the yard quiet, the dirt path unmarked by footprints. Only the wind moved, brushing cold across her skin. For weeks after, Emily watched the porch nervously, half dreading the doorbell's chime. But it never came, not until 2 years later, during the first lockdowns, when the world itself seemed haunted. Alone again, she heard a deliberate knock echo through the house, heavy against the wood. Peering through the peephole, her breath caught in her throat. Dan's face, expressionless, close enough to fog the glass. She opened the door, this time faster, more afraid, and again, nothing. Just the empty woods pressing in like a held breath. They searched for answers but found none. No break-ins, no mischief, no signs of intruders. Dan half joked about stress, isolation, maybe even a trick of the mind. But Emily knew what she'd seen. Appalachian folk whispers spoke of doppelgangers, silent doubles that bring misfortune or death. Yet no sickness followed, no disaster struck. The house stayed calm, almost too calm, as if the silence itself was watching. And Emily began to wonder if the worst thing wasn't what the figure meant, but why it kept returning. Sometimes at night, Emily wakes to a soft shuffle on the porch, the sound of weight shifting just beyond the door. She never opens it now. She just listens, heart pounding as the porch boards creak under invisible feet. In town they whisper about the woman with the mirror husband, the one who waits for her own face to knock. And in the hills they say if you see your double, you should never, ever let it inside. We leave the porch now, where a double waits in the dark, patient and smiling. But this next shadow doesn't need a door, a window or a face. It slips through wires, crackling across the line, reaching out with a voice you thought was gone. Because some calls don't come from the living. Gary Sudbrink lived a quiet life in his small apartment in the early 1990s. Nights were slow, the city noises muffled by thick curtains, and the faint smell of dust and old smoke hanging in the air. One cold evening, as rain tapped steadily against the window, the sharp ring of his landline shattered the silence. It was late, too late for anyone to be calling. He answered expecting a wrong number or a prank. Instead, a warped voice crackled through the receiver, distorting the words, but chillingly clear. "Gary, it's me. Don't you recognize me?" The line went dead before he could respond. When he tried to trace the call, no record existed. It was as if the call came from nowhere. The calls didn't stop. Each time, the voice knew things, intimate childhood memories no one else should have known. The name of his first dog, a secret nickname, the way his father used to call him inside. Gary's nights became restless, shadows growing heavier around him. Who was reaching through time to speak to him? Years later, flipping through an old photo album, Gary froze on a picture of two boys. Him and Danny, his childhood best friend who died in a car accident at 12. The voice on the phone matched Danny's. No explanation could bridge that impossible connection, and the calls never returned. Gary was left wondering what lies beyond life, and if some bonds never truly break. To this day, Gary keeps the old landline tucked away in a dusty corner of his apartment. It's been unplugged for years. No cable, no power, no connection to anything. Yet sometimes, deep in the night, When the rain taps against the windows and the city has gone quiet, it rings. A sharp, unmistakable trill cutting through the silence. Gary never answers. He just listens, heart pounding, as the sound echoes once, twice, 3 times. Then, just as suddenly, it stops. And in the stillness that follows, Gary swears he hears it, faint and crackling like a voice from somewhere far away. A boy's voice whispering his name. These stories remind us that the line between the known and the unknown is thinner than we think. Sometimes all it takes is a flicker in the dark, a whisper when you're alone, or a shadow in the corner of your eye to remind you we're never as safe as we pretend to be. Subscribe, because when the next chilling tale creeps into the light, you won't want to face it alone.